All right. Good morning, James.
Morning, Lynn.
It's September 7th, and this is part 1 of episode 10. I think we're going to try to tape 2 today.
Good.
So, a few days ago, you received a message from your Twitter friend, Mr. Bobcat, or Bobcat Master. He had a topic suggestion, so I'll go ahead and read what he wrote. Bobcat writes, "Oddly enough, you've catapulted yourself into a quasi-leadership position, so my suggestion for a podcast topic is a tactical guide of what the types of boys in Charlottesville could have done to prevent what happened, and it could be specific. Hard to believe, I know, but I predict that soon you will start picking up followers left and right." It's hard. Is that hard to believe, James?
It's real. One, it's the leadership part is scaring me. The quasi part's okay. The left and right, I got a suggestion for that this morning. My roommate said you ought to get more readers from the left end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that would soon be the end of me. There would be a campaign to exterminate the crackpot.
Yeah.
The shards of my consciousness would be buried under salted earth, never to be found again.
Oh, I've backed it all up.
Okay. Okay, cool.
And all your books and everything. So we have multiple copies.
I am interested if you could. I'm sorry to address you as if you're a secretary and I have a real job. If you could find an alternative print-on-demand platform.
Okay.
Okay, other than CreateSpace that I could start using and publishing books on. And something that would, because CreateSpace is a subsidiary of Amazon.
Yeah.
So if Amazon decides that I'm not, my books are not going to be sold on Amazon, then I'm very doubtful that CreateSpace would keep publishing for me.
All right.
I'd be okay if Amazon didn't sell my stuff. If I can't get anything printed, then it's going to be real dicey to save anything because the powers that be can keep playing whack-a-mole with you as far as your electronic publishing and your websites.
Yeah.
So if you could find a right-friendly print-on-demand I'll just start using them right away for some of my books.
All right. I think I know just who to ask about that too. So
Okay.
I will look into that.
In fact, I would probably immediately just go to using them for all my nonfiction.
Yeah.
And using Amazon for my fiction to try to stay out of hot water.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You've written about that most of writers like yourself should have taken 2 professional names. One for fiction and one for nonfiction. But it's too late for that.
Yes. There you go. Now, I wouldn't call it a tactical. The way I would approach it would not be tactical. It has to be operational because a tactical approach in a vacuum is just doomed.
So you're talking now to Bobcat's question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tactical is what you do on the ground when you're in the situation.
Right.
Operational is between the strategic level, which would be, for instance, what city you go to, and the tactical level, which is what do you do when you get into a confrontation. Mm-hmm. Operational would be, okay, if we're going to do something in this area, where do we do it? How do we go about it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's got to be in an operational context.
Yeah, I think it's from all aspects, because this has come up on your website too with Sam J and stuff. Like, why wouldn't you recommend doing this kind of thing? And to me, it seems the opposite of what you do.
I've been writing on this subject since 2014.
Yeah.
And early on, I put disclaimers like, really don't go out and fight these people.
All right.
But I did give advice on how you would beat them up.
Yeah, I thought the soda can idea I really liked. Yeah. You fling soda cans at people and then they open and then they're no longer a weapon. So that's pretty cool.
Now, there's a big problem to begin with.
Mm.
I saw a lot of videos on the Charlottesville thing.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much masculinity on either side of the line.
Mm.
Okay? I mean, there were a lot of guys on the right trying to be men, but these seem to be thinkers, writer types, politicized people, people that have beliefs that were very emotional and had tried to build themselves up with weights and to try to bring practical weapons and everything, but were not people that were naturally the types that do well in these confrontations. And it occurred to me yesterday, I came in from my brief break at work, and the three people running the store at the time in the building, these are the three smartest people in the building at the time out of 50 people. Mm. All they're talking about is the Ravens NFL draft. Mm. Okay, that's it. That's all they're concerned about. There are just at the store alone, there was a recent security problem that was pretty bad, could have been real bad, where we had guys in the back room, 6 of them, setting up in ambush positions to try to nail coworkers. Other than the conversation I initiated with the guy in charge then and his boss in the morning, there was no conversation about this. Wow. Okay? They're talking about the game instead, and that's right there in their business. Yeah. So what you have is if you could take the Baltimore Orioles and give them a pallet of Coca-Cola cans, let's say 24 Major League ball players, and just give them each a 12-pack of soda cans, they could clear the streets in, a minute. Yeah. All right. And these are guys that would naturally work together. They would nominate their own leaders on the spot. They would each be checking to make sure that they were cohesive. The people that are good under pressure, all of those men in our culture have been sucked into sports. Yeah. That are nothing but these distractions for the regular people. Yeah. So what you saw there was something that, in terms of combat, was just completely laughable. And we can, if you want to use the outline, I want to hop ahead to one thing. Sure. And then we can go through the outline. The weaponry idea is just bad. Mm. Okay, because any successful use of a weapon that mimics or equals a police weapon, it's going to bring the police right down on you, and the government's going to be behind them. Sticks, people have gotten in more trouble for using sticks, which are not forensically weapons, than they have for using bats.
Well, they charged the stick man with a crime out here.
Yeah, well, he's not allowed to have a stick in his hand, I heard, but there's more charges against people that had sticks, non-modified extension weapons, which aren't forensically a weapon. Just the possession of it doesn't show intent. It hasn't been weighted on the end to crush skulls, anything like that. A bat is forensically more dangerous than a stick, but tactically it's not as good. Mm. Okay? So you have people choosing to use sticks instead of bats on the right, because they're interested in behaving in a tactically sound manner and, quote, winning, where the other side is just picking up nasty weapons because they want to threaten and hurt people, and most importantly, they want to draw a counterattack. Now, the cops are more concerned with a citizen using a stick than using a bat, because the stick is a weapon of his. In fact, I saw one of the Antifa protesters disarmed a cop. Oh, wow. At Charlottesville. I watched this on video. This cop in full body armor had a bow staff, and some yo just grabbed it off of him. Okay, so the stick is, in terms of law enforcement, is a controlling weapon, and when you use that stick now in a group, you're going to be seen as a direct challenge to the police authority. Yeah. Mace, that is a law enforcement weapon. Yeah. In some places, they're illegal. Yeah. It's also a weapon of sissies and women. It's also a poor mass combat weapon because you will gash your own people. Yeah. That's just bad news. Yeah. The firearms, a neighbor of mine is on film shooting at the ground in front of the kid that had the aerosol can. Right in front of the cops. So you don't want to bring a firearm either. Also, dressing in armor and tactical gear, again, you're mimicking the police. You're going to be challenging the police. The leftists are getting away with it, and they will get away with it because the cops know what they are, and they're not a threat to the cops. Okay? Yeah. They're out there to draw people out that the cops could hammer.
I would love to talk to one of those cops. If you're a cop and you're listening, get in touch, because I think that they are told to stand down, and it must be absolutely infuriating to be a cop and to just sit there and watch this melee and not have the authority to go in there and do your job.
I was with a man who was talking to one of the organizers, and I overheard their conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He said that the police officers that they were networking with, that were supposed to provide them safe egress and had told them where they could leave,
Mm-hmm.
when they refused to allow them to leave, where they had told them that they could leave in case things went bad, and before they forced them to go through the people they had gathered illegally to attack them, the cops were laughing. Not all of them, but some of the cops were actually laughing at these guys. Again, you're dressing up on the weekend.
Yeah.
These people hold these rallies on the weekend so that they can get people that have jobs to go and do this kind of stuff. All right, so this is this is like somebody in the audience putting on a pair of boxing gloves and standing on the ring apron at a pro boxing match. Okay, this is like the boxing people aren't going to appreciate this person.
No.
Okay, because you're there acting like your own cop.
Right.
Now, you do have to defend yourself when you're in a situation, but I would suggest you not do it like the cops do it. And we can get to that down the line, but I just want to get the weapons thing out of the way right away.
Okay.
We'll touch on it a few more times as you go through the outline.
Yeah. So let's go back to the top, because as you do, you have brought in the history from the ancients on up. So your first point here, in your outline is on seeking battle, Grant versus Lee.
Okay, you should study the campaigns of the Army of the Potomac under Grant. It was led by, I think, 6 or 7 different generals. And the only one that was successful was Grant. Meade, I don't think that wasn't the Army of the Potomac. I think that was an ad hoc force that the Confederates ran into up at Gettysburg. But all these Union generals had been grotesquely unsuccessful against fighting an inferior-sized, inferior-supplied force of Confederates under Lee, and largely they were unsuccessful because they were seeking battle on enemy ground. The Confederates, when they sought battle on enemy ground at Antietam, that they fought to a draw there, but that was a horror story for them. They had their own bodies filled up the whole Corn Road. It was a depressed road that these guys were using like an entrenchment, and so many of them got cut down that it like wasn't a depression anymore at the end of the battle. Okay, and Gettysburg, when they went out of the border state of Maryland into Pennsylvania, that crushed the Army of Northern Virginia. So seeking battle in enemy territory you only do when you have multiple advantages. And Grant decided that he was just going to, quote, make Lee face the arithmetic. He didn't even care if he won. He didn't care if he lost 10 Union soldiers to 1 Confederate.
Yeah.
Those Confederate soldiers were a lot more effective, probably the best light infantry in history. And he just needed to kill those guys. And his guys, for the most part, weren't worth that much anyhow, because they weren't even scraping into the population base of the North at this point. So when you're seeking battle, you don't want to seek battle in enemy territory. You want to seek battle when the enemy does not have resupply and you do. Well, in Charlottesville, the enemy had all the resupply because they had the cops. The cops were actually the main force. The people that the right-wing people fought were only the auxiliaries, and they couldn't really defeat them. Now, the other thing that you want is a supply and infrastructure. Again, you want to fight on your own ground. You don't want to have to go to the hospital in the town that's set out to set things up so you got injured and arrested and charged. You don't want to look for a hospital there. So you want to make sure that it's on your ground. If you're going to seek battle, if you're the underdog, you can't do what Grant did. Grant could do what he did because he had overwhelming force and he had better quality equipment, which he used to destroy the better quality men of the Army of Northern Virginia.
Well, James, I want to stop you.
stages.
I want to stop you because I want to back up and
Okay.
make it clear to the listeners that James doesn't, and I don't recommend that anybody go seek battle or look for fights or fight police or fight Antifa. This is not a suggestion of what you should do. This is merely a historical discussion of this type of interaction between people who disagree with one another. Okay, so do you agree with that, James?
Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Absolutely.
Okay, we're not recommending anybody do any of these things.
So this takes us right to the next one.
Which is on giving battle at Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg. I think it was Burnside. He lost his job in this battle, and then Hooker got the job running the Army of the Potomac, and then Hooker got wasted at Chancellorsville. But the important thing is Stonewall Jackson was killed at Chancellorsville. Who cares about Hooker's career? He was an idiot. The Union artillery could almost hit the stone wall at Fredericksburg from the other side of the river. So Lee lined his army up behind the stone wall and just waited for the Union troops to get within 50 yards and started cutting them down. So there were stories of Confederate soldiers saying, "A little bit closer, Yank. I don't need," because they didn't want to have to come out from behind the wall.
Right.
They wanted to shoot these guys as close to the wall as they could because they were all barefoot, and the Union guys had shoes.
Wow.
So they're trying to pick out guys and shoot them that have their size shoes that are close enough for them to hustle out there and grab a pair of shoes. So that's if you're going to be in a battle, you want to give battle, not seek battle, particularly if you're the small, weak force. And any group of people that's probably going to be attacked because they believe in family or culture or identity, and they don't believe in the big system, well, logically, they're going to be outnumbered. They're going to be a small group of people, so they should never seek battle. Remember, battle's not an attack. Battle is where you're both exposing yourself to the maximum risk by making a big commitment of force. So the only battle you want to have is when you give battle. So that would be in your hometown.
Yeah.
That would be at a facility that you own or rent from somebody that you trust. It would be where you have a permit for whatever gathering you want to have. It would be
the permit question is a little bit further towards seeking battle, I think, because that's a big difference. Which we try, Sam, go back to Sam J. You don't go across state lines and march and. You're just in your hometown where you live and where you work, making your way around town, which is much different from going to someone else's town and trying to impose your will on them in some way.
That's operationally unsound, and to me, it's actually unethical. I think if people want to tear down the monuments in their own city and not have these things, then I think that's up to them.
Yeah, this is usually what the right complains about the left doing, is coming around and minding your business. So let's not do that to them.
So, for instance, your church, if you belong to a church group, and this ties into the legalities. And it depends on what state you're in. If you're on ground where you belong and they come after you, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
When I talk to people about defending your house, okay, you have blunt weapons near the front door, you have edge weapons farther into the house, and you have your firearms and your really nasty stuff all the way in the core of your house where your retreat is.
Right.
Because as you get deeper into your home, you have more justification for the use of lethal force.
Yeah.
And when you go outside, you generally have little or none.
Right.
So you wouldn't. This is the same concept. You're just trying to limit your liability, because ultimately the only reason why this stuff has been happening is this is a way to attack and punish and lock up the people that voted for Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
These people that are out there, they're the same ones that were attacking his supporters before. They're attacking them now.
That's
and
right.
These people are actually going out there to be attacked so that they can counterattack and be arrested.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole purpose for this. So if you're going to have a battle, it's got to be a battle, where you're receiving, where you're accepting the attack, where you're not on the offensive.
Yeah.
Okay, it's less risk at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
From traditionally, military thinking is you never even do an attack unless you have 3-to-1 superiority.
Wow.
And 7-to-1 is usually considered, in most simulation war games you play, if you got 7-to-1 odds, it's a done deal. You don't have to roll the dice.
Okay.
Okay, but 3-to-1, anything below 3-to-1 is a bad odds attack, and it usually ends up being a disaster.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
and it's one place where the law and reality align, right? That you're better off defending your home and
yes.
your family versus going out and attacking.
And you're more effective if you're the fewer, and if you're the smaller party, because you could fight on a narrower front. If they're attacking you in a place where you've chosen, then you can narrow the point of contact.
Right.
The doors to your church, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You fight them there.
Control where the enemy
right.
Comes in. The next item on your outline is on prepared ground, Xenophon.
Okay. A nephew of the King of Kings of Persia hires 10,000 Greek mercenaries to fight for him. And in this battle, he gets himself killed. The Persians didn't really have the equipage to wipe these guys out, but they had them surrounded. So they invited their leaders to a parley, and they killed their leaders, which left this Spartan hard ass and this Athenian intellectual named Xenophon. Okay. And I think that name comes from his association with the Spartans, where he was their stranger friend.
Uh-huh.
And he would be a colonel, and they managed a retreat all the way to the Black Sea. From the middle of the Persian Empire, they went over mountains. It's called the Anabasis, which means going down to the sea. The ancients didn't think in terms of going inland or going to the water. Or going to the coast. They thought in terms of going up from the sea and going down to the sea, because they walked and they appreciated elevations in a way that we don't.
And they have the islands too. So many islands that have that.
Yes.
That's the Hawaiian way of orienting, also up the hill or towards the sea.
That makes sense. And these guys didn't even have any horsemen. They had very limited skirmishing troops. They're mainly heavy infantry. They managed to do a fighting retreat for hundreds of miles over months through bad weather, and almost all of them were saved. And I'm thinking of this when I looked at these guys walking through Charlotte. You had, for all these alt-right guys complaining about the person being atomized and about you have to have a hierarchy and everything, they're all just wandering around.
Yeah.
There was nobody was walking in formation. These people had never trained to do anything together to help each other out of a scrap. They were less cohesive than the attackers, which was a disaster.
Well,
and
this goes to the leadership question, right? The question of, are you a leader of the movement? Well, I don't think there is any kind of cohesive movement. I think you are a person who has a lot to offer, and people are taking you up on that. But the leaders of this Unite the Right rally, a bunch of them, or at least I think 2 of them, have been outed as like former occupiers and former Obama supporters. So number one, if they're sincere, they're probably just messing with us, right? And messing with their group. And number 2, if that's the mindset they're coming from, it's not going to be very effective, right?
Right. And the type of leadership you have on the ground is different than the leadership that you have organized. There's a complete disconnect. You saw some leadership by some guys. There was this big, hairy former biker, I guess. He was marching along and people were following him. But this was not cohesive.
No.
This was, you see stragglers were getting picked off. When the stragglers would fight back, all of a sudden the cops are there, videos are there, people are getting arrested for counterattacking, which is another thing that happens when you don't know how to do what Xenophon did. So you could get it for free, I'm sure, online and download it. You should read the Anabasis.
Okay. Put it on my long, long list.
Yeah, if you're a group of guys and you maybe people at the concert you were attending found out that you were alt-right people and they start attacking you, having read something like that, if you all read it, then you should know what to do.
And it's good, and it helps to think about staying on your home turf and building up your own community, because how do you have cohesion with a guy that you just met and you don't even remember what he's wearing or
Right.
what he looks like, and
you're not used to doing the same activity together.
Right.
Seriously, even though they aren't fighters by nature, if you had 100 baseball players together at a given place, and they start.
They have a common language, right?
Right.
Physical.
They have a common language. They know how to watch each other.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to take charge and say, okay, all the shortstops, they get out on the flanks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And they get all the DHs up front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you have to do. You make a football team out of it in 1 minute.
Yeah. Your next item is on breaking ranks, the Mongols.
Okay. Many American Indian tribes did this successfully, and all of the steppes people, from the Scythians up to the Mongols, and even Tamerlane, they all did this successfully, and they were successful against much larger and stronger forces. They would feign retreat, and they would get the enemy. This happened most disastrously at Nicopolis, which is Victory Community, in the Balkans, where the Hungarian army and the French Crusaders and some other European Crusaders were completely annihilated by the Turks, because the knights broke ranks and chased these fleeing light cavalrymen. Their horses fagged out. They got mowed down. And then the infantrymen that they left hanging in the wind, they all got cut down. Okay, so if you can get the enemy to break ranks, then you have the superior tactics, which shows you that the leftists, again, were superior to the alt-right in this engagement that they had, because you had these guys with bats taunting the guys that were walking away and trying to isolate them, and even making some contact, and they did just enough to get a couple of these guys to do a cohesive counterattack, which 10 seconds later looks like 4 dudes hammering one guy. And now that's going to be taken out of context, and that's what's going to be shown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why these guys are getting paid $25 an hour.
That's right.
These are hired thugs. And if they're BLM guys, they're getting paid maybe $1,000 for the weekend.
Yeah.
And they've got their legal fees taken care of and everything like that. The whole thing is designed to get you to break ranks. Again, that's with all the emotion I saw there. I saw guys crying. I saw, muscular guys crying and pleading with their opponents and trying to reason with them and talk to them instead of just defending themselves and holding their banner, or whatever the ostensible reason was for them to be there to hold up their, preserve the monuments banner or whatever that was. So you're going to have, with untrained people and with anybody that's been systematically emasculated, which in our culture today is anybody but a criminal or an athlete.
Yeah.
Okay. And the cops have been, but they have a way of shoring that up with their numbers. And the militaries, your combat units, they're not emasculated either, or at least their masculinity has been restored in this in their training context. When you get a bunch of people together, remember, these guys are there because they realize that their country's trying to get rid of men and trying to get rid specifically of men of their type. And they were all very upset. So they're all by nature going to behave poorly under stress.
Well, here's a question. Here's a question, because this whole conversation, I think that the thing that you would offer, or the thing that your advice would be to build up that masculinity in the first place, and then the rest will follow. And what's the learning curve like, and how can people do that?
Okay, one, you need to have the tools. There was a recent fight, biggest money fight in human history.
Yeah.
Floyd Money against Conor McNugget. All right. These guys went at it, and Mayweather had to go out there and treat McNugget like he was a girl on her first day at the gym. And a pro just goes out there and stands in front of her and lets her. I mean, Mayweather had to go out there and let this kid hit him.
Mm-hmm.
just to make it look like a fight. He did everything he could to sell it. He rose, in my estimation, a lot there because McGregor, who had a lot of heart, and I think this guy would fight with chainsaws. This guy's no. Okay, there's no lack of masculinity there with the psychotic leprechaun. Now, but he did not have the tools as far as the technical aspect.
Right.
He's mountain climbing, without equipment. It's like he's trying to cut the grass without a lawnmower. He didn't have a jab, so he's not in fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so and that was that simple. So what you need in terms of what we're talking about to be able to behave in a stoic manner in this type of situation that these guys were in down in Charlotte, you have to be somebody that has been beaten up and stayed cool. Okay, in other words, you've had to have been in a boxing gym getting punched in the face, and you're listening to your coach instead of tearing your headgear off and trying to tackle the guy. Okay, you have to be a guy that went out and got in a stick fight and actually fought back and didn't quit and didn't rip your headgear off and storm out because you felt like the guy made you look like a fool. Nothing like that. You have to be, or you could do this with any other sport. For what happened there, the best conditioning would have probably been rugby. Okay, somebody that was involved in rugby. Again, football.
Yeah.
Anything that's physical, confrontational, where you're sustaining contact with somebody that's opposing you and you're staying cerebral about it, you're not overcome with emotions.
You're not panicking.
You have to pick your contact sport and go out there and do it for conditioning instead of how it is done now as a way to make money for the individual and to remove that individual from the body politic so he can be set aside and you don't have that aggressive genetic material in the middle of your body politic. You've got him as like this living museum piece, reenacting ancient fights over skulls, on Sunday.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be anything specific. There's no substitution for boxing. If you want a quick study, you go to a boxing gym, get punched in the face. At whatever point you're able to get in there and keep your gloves up and keep going after this guy while he's punching you in the face and dancing away, then you're okay. Then you should be good to handle a stressful situation.
It requires doing. It requires getting out there. It's not something you can do behind a keyboard.
Yeah, and lifting weights and getting all pumped up and drinking energy drinks and bringing your mace with you. Okay, hey, that's a recipe for disaster on every level. Okay. When it comes to combat.
Well, you touched on the stoic aspect. Your next item is on silence, the Spartans.
Okay, the creepiest thing about fighting the Spartans was they didn't make any noise. Okay, so it's literally you're in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. These guys are like the Nazgul from the Lord of the Rings coming after you. They would have a boy playing a flute so that they could keep time when they were marching. What did it for them was their cohesion. So there's my entire survival. You realize how many times I would have been beaten up and robbed, and possibly killed in my life in Baltimore if I was somebody that started running his mouth.
Yeah.
When aggression was shown against him. I would have ended up like so many of these young black guys that keep running their mouth at a cop and get shot.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was reminded the other day that there was a 28th incident of me being harassed by the police. Right. Because we were my wife, who fired me in 2002, we were discussing exactly when my son was born. And then that got to a discussion of us having a talk about a relationship in a Baltimore City park in a neighborhood where we lived, and two cops came up to us and made us leave. We're sitting on a park bench holding hands with wedding rings on, okay, having a low-tone conversation, the only people in the park, and these cops come up and make us leave. So I guess they had to do a drug deal or screw some prostitutes in the bathroom or something like that, know. But that I didn't get beat up. She wasn't reminding me at the time that she watched two cops, work me over with their nightsticks.
Oh,
because
I don't know about that one.
Right. Well, she wasn't reminding me of that time because that time didn't happen.
Oh.
Because I just said,
Oh, God.
sir, my
Yeah,
way,
sure.
sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not, in certain circles, I might be considered dangerous. A leopard's dangerous, but you know what? When he runs into two lions, he climbs the tree. Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't puff his chest out and say, okay, I have claws too. That's just not smart.
No. No.
All right. So there's no substitute for being quiet. And the other thing is you're never going to have any cohesion in a group of guys that are trying to defend themselves. And I'm thinking of concerts right here. We can step away from the Charlottesville thing. I know a guy who was almost killed at a rock concert in 1978 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Because him and the guys he was with had no cohesion, and the group that attacked them did. And this guy gets isolated in the bathroom, and he gets torn apart.
Oh.
I mean, he had brain damage. This guy was bad off. So if you're going to survive a situation, everybody knows who the most confident guy is in a given group of guys that are with each other. If you're going to survive in a situation, you have to have one voice. If you're all in the habit of spouting off and running your mouth, like you're a bunch of teenage kids from the ghetto, which seems to be the way that, a lot of white men want to comport themselves, as if they're, Eminem or something, then your leader, when crunch time comes, how are you going to hear him? You're running your own mouth. Okay, so again, the people who are masters of aggression are military organizations, and in their organizations, very few people open their mouth.
Right.
Unless it's for a warning.
Yeah. A legitimate warning. Yeah.
A confirmation that an order was received.
Right.
All right. So silence is golden.
Yeah. Your next item is on parade, Kent State.
Okay. The purpose of demonstrations is to be victimized by the government, so that ideally you can see some girl with a flower in her hair getting bayoneted by, soldiers. Okay. I mean, that's what you want. These things are done to generate victims.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, even like Martin Luther King, he wanted his people to sit there quietly and get arrested. And
yeah. You want to go out and you want to, you are the sacrifice against the system. Now, these alt-right guys went out there thinking of this in terms of a battle to defeat these left-wing people that had been attacking them. And they were only the force that was drawing them out so they could be attacked by the cops.
Right.
And they were also drawing attacks on themselves so that they can elevate martyrs of color and martyrs of the female gender that had been attacked by these vicious white people, how they're going to be betrayed, even though these guys saw themselves as defending themselves. So if you're going to go out and demonstrate, you need to at least understand what the game is. The game is to be the one that gets hurt, acting decently, okay?
Yeah.
Which the left hasn't. They've rarely pulled that off well. The only people that pulled it off well were Martin Luther King's people, who would actually behave like decent, dignified people while they're being brutalized by the people that were representing the system that was in place then. When most of the stuff went down in the North and the stuff that's happened recently, the people on the left have not behaved with any dignity. So if you can go out there and behave with dignity and get your head split open or get your nose broken, then there is your propaganda footage instead of their propaganda footage.
Right. You point out that the left has not traditionally been good at that, and I don't think they're still being good at it, because there's a lot of footage of them looking really awful, and
yes.
even
They're
if Pelosi came out and said, this Antifa stuff's gotta stop.
Yeah, they borrowed a lot of imagery from the people they're targeting.
Yeah.
Okay, and this again has not been utilized by the people on the right. They still think they're in a debate of ideas, and they still think they're discussing rights, where they're really dealing with the little heckling scouts of the system who are trying. The purpose of these left-wing people are really to find who the dissidents are, so they can get put on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
That's it. They probably now, whatever intelligence organization is in charge of this, of keeping track of dissident paleface men. They probably have a gymnasium wall as their whiteboard now after Charlottesville.
With the red twine connecting all the.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be ridiculous, and they're still updating it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that stuff doesn't go away, as we put all this stuff online, which I never expected to do myself. But it's out there, and that's why we emphasize that we're not advocating violence in any way. But your next item which I think is what we already started to cover at the top, which was the tools and fools, rabble, rabble, mercenaries, and the Cartwright.
Yeah, the Cartwright, the fools. I mean, this was set up to trap the alt-right, so they're the Cartwright, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Antifa, they're the rabble. These are the peasants that would get riled up by some scumbag in a medieval drama, to go after anybody that broke a social norm. If you got some woman on the edge of town that's working as a midwife and she's healing people with some herbs, and the gay priests want to have her killed so that they can collect more donations to pay for their faith healing, well, then they get the rabble together and they go after the old midwife. Well, this is just an update of that. So they're not, like, the leftist people, those Antifa people, they're not the enemy. They're just this rabble that's being sent out there. No blow that's struck against them is going to have a positive outcome.
Yeah. They're just a mob. I think you pointed out in another, I don't know if it was another podcast, but how Rome was...
Yes.
Yeah, just
that's who they are.
A mob ready to launch at any moment.
And it goes with the anarcho-tyranny. Now, the BLM, they're mercenaries. These are paid people.
Yeah.
The one kid is now suing the city of Charlottesville for getting his head split open.
Yeah, after was that the guy that he's on video attacking, and then... Yes,
and then he breaks and runs when they decide to counterattack. Again, they're breaking ranks.
Yeah.
And they're counterattacking this guy. He runs away. Now he's the victim. The whole reality is now compressed to the 10 seconds of him running and getting beat up.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's Colin Flaherty does all these videos of black on white violence online, and he has thousands of them, and he can't find any videos of white on black violence. Well, these alt-right guys just handed that up.
Yeah.
Now you have a video, which we're going to be seeing till the day I die, of these white guys beating up this black guy. And that's going to be the mainstream narrative of what happened in Charlottesville, is those guys standing over that poor black kid, even though he was armed with a bat and he was assaulting them. That all goes away. As soon as you become the aggressor, that all goes away.
Even the guy who shot, they cut the video so that you can't see the flames coming out.
Right.
He's just shooting, he just got the urge to shoot a guy, right?
You're at home opening up a pack of Play-Doh for your children, and you're recording and will be editing this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And we're to think that the media does not have the ability to take a piece of film and edit it.
Oh, yeah. When I first started doing this, I was amazed at how easy it is for me. I've never done anything like this. I'm like, I could just switch this around, patch it up, and...
I mean, they made George Zimmerman into an Anglo-Saxon Presbyterian.
Yeah.
Right? So, and what, he was a Polish Puerto Rican or something? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And he had that, there was that picture that was all bloody, and they had like a high-resolution digital photo, and then they started like running it through a photocopier or something until you couldn't see the blood because it was black and white. It's very easy, and what you see is it's so hard. It's hard to, as an ordinary person, to just remember that everything you see could easily be faked. It's exhausting to go through life like that.
It's all edited. All you have to do is omit certain things.
Yeah.
And it totally changes the picture. What do we have next on the list there?
You have on Naked War, Pancreatian Psychology.
The leaders for battalion and regiment level units in ancient Greece were drawn whenever possible out of the ranks of their MMA fighters, which is the smartest fighter because he's got to mix wrestling and kickboxing and throw in other elements in there. And by their rules, if you got pushed out of the dug-up, that's what they call it in the skama, means the dug-up. There's no ropes, there's no cage. If you got pushed out, you lost. Okay, so it also had elements of sumo in it.
Sumo, yeah.
Right. So these guys were used as ambassadors, and they were used as colonels and brigadiers. This is who you want to draw your leadership from. If you have a group of guys that is going to be going out and might be attacked, then you want to have a guy there that's done multiple types of fighting and has integrated it. You want a martial arts guy there. You want somebody that's not just a one-dimensional, oh, he's a wrestler, he's a football player, he's a boxer, somebody that's done a number of things because they're immediately going to be able to assess the value of the men around them, what they can be used for in that situation, which was my job when I was running small security details. You know, the gigantic guy, I use him as a door plug. Okay. The tall guy, I use him to walk around on the interior and scan the perimeter. And I'm the little evil twerp, so I snoop around. Okay, so this is what this is one reason why any cohesive group of people that are out there, even if you're just getting together for a book meeting, but you're in Manhattan and the 10 of you might be attacked, one of your guys should be an MMA guy that's not a hothead, not some tattooed freak, but a level-headed guy. Okay? And there should be some discussion, hey, if something goes down. And when I get together with Mescaline Franklin, he'll tell me, he's like, okay, this is your town. You just tell me what I need to do if something happens.
Yeah.
And what do I need to look out for? So I might tell him, hey, you're looking a little bit tense. You're a muscular, tattooed, scary-looking dude, so relax a little bit so you don't scare any of the local wildlife, and then we have to defend ourselves. Or I could say, you know what, I'm not feeling too good, and there's been a lot of guys creeping around in cars and stuff like that. So could you just watch the street side, and I'll watch straight ahead? And so it depends. It depends on me, depends on him, depends on the situation. But we immediately, before we go out, it's like, okay, what's the plan? And that's not that we're planning on doing anything. It's what is the plan if something bad happens to us?
Yeah, it gets you in that mindset, too, that you're looking out for each other and you're ready to do some, even if it goes completely opposite to what you expected, you're already thinking about it and on the same page, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for that.
Okay, and then equipment, which you covered partially as well. You have caps, glasses, gloves, mounts.
SS Sam sent me a tactical cap. It's a ball cap that's got a plastic shell in it. That I ended up putting it on Lily Hun for her driving, since she gets in a lot of car accidents for to protect her pretty little head. Because I have a big head and I can't expand the hat enough to fit all the way around my head. I didn't realize my head was that big, but it must be all that writing. But it's an excellent idea. It just looks like an ordinary cap, but it is light armor, and you could take it off by the bill, and you could backhand somebody in the face with it and break their nose.
Oh.
Okay, a lot of private security guys use this. Baltimore City cops on tactical details wear these things. And thank you, SS Sam. It is now protecting a more delicate thing than my skull. I would suggest getting these things, although you're going to have to get them customized somehow if you've got a big head. The other thing, the one thing you absolutely want to have is sunglasses that strap on. Because you're going to have bleach or something thrown in your face if any of these leftist twerps show up. If you're eventually, when these alt-right guys wise up and they stop going to leftist functions and they start holding their own things, they're going to be attacked, just like Trump's people were attacked at his rallies.
Yeah.
And a couple of these guys were hit in the face with bleach. There's going to be mace. is going to be used against them, and these people aren't going to be prosecuted for this, and they know that.
Yeah.
So you really want to protect your eyes. The other thing is the most common reason for the stoppage of MMA fights is a finger in the eye. It's just an accidental finger in the eye. These are like the toughest guys in the world, and you stick your finger in their eye, and now all of a sudden they're like a rabbit.
Well, that's like your brain is right behind your eyeball, you know. You don't want people...
There was a test done in ancient Rome. It was in the early imperial period where the Magnus Ludus, the main school for gladiators, where they had all 2,000 of these guys line up, and an instructor stabbed at their eyes with a sword to see if they would blink, and he didn't thrust it into any of their eyes. Only a handful of these guys didn't blink, and these are professional hand-to-hand killers.
Yeah.
Okay, so the eye is really important. You have to protect it, and the sunglasses aren't going to do you a lot of good when they're flying down the street, so you need to get a little strap on them. The other thing is, as far as you don't want to wear any type of glove that's made for punching, no MMA gloves. I've seen that. You don't want to carry any knives, sticks, or weapons of any kind, but you could be dealing with people that are throwing broken glass at you. You might be dealing with people that show up with hypodermic syringes, with knives. I suggest a pair of batting gloves or driving gloves because they have padding on the palms. So when you're defending yourself, it's less likely you're going to get cut there. And if you do seriously get attacked and you have to strike back, they're really good for poking people in the eyes because once you put your finger together, when you're wearing these batting gloves, you could actually hit a light punching bag with them. And you don't straighten your fingers all the way out. You keep each joint of the fingers slightly bent, and you make like a little bullet head out of your fingers. Mm-hmm. And you just use that to strike at their eyes, so you don't put any weight into it. You're not swinging your hand. If somebody is trying to stab you or something, the best thing to do is to poke them in the eye with not one of your fingers, but a couple of them. And that works better when you have a type of gloves on that has this elastic quality. So either batting gloves or driving gloves, whatever you like. No type of MMA gloves or bag gloves. They're made for punching. Putting them on is proof of intent to punch, and that's battery right there. You intend to commit battery. Yeah. So you don't do that. So you have your black gloves on, you have your black sunglasses on. The hats mostly come in blue. I would stick with blue for pants. Blue jeans are really the best pants for fight situations because you're potentially dealing with concrete or asphalt. And again, it's a pretty neutral color. Mm-hmm. I think that any alt-right guys that show up as a group at any of these events should wear white polo shirts. For one thing, when you get cut up or you get your head split open, it's going to make better propaganda footage. And you learn how to be a real protester. That's why you're there, is to get propaganda footage. But the other thing is unlike Antifa, who are wearing National Socialist colors, mm-hmm. You're not. I think they're wearing SS colors, actually. Yeah. Okay.
The Unite the Right guys, they got a little bit of heat because they coordinated, I think at least some of them did, to wear khakis and polos, and people thought they looked a little dorky, I guess.
Well, the khakis is a bad idea because it's associated with military. With military or paramilitary dress. You want to wear nothing is more civilian than white.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the most innocuous thing you could wear is a white polo shirt. Most of your visual impression is going to be given by what you're wearing on your torso and what you're wearing on your head.
Yeah. That's a good idea with the contrast. You get all bloody. All right, your next item is on cohesion, which I think we probably covered a little bit already. You put pig, echelon, and rugby there. Okay,
the best game you could play is rugby. Football, American football departs extremely from rugby with the passing game and sending people out. So football is a bad idea for preparing for this kind of thing unless you play on the line, because it's been engineered to make a lot of exciting outgoing action where guys are running around on their own here and there and other guys are hitting them. And actually what happened in that parking garage looked a little bit like football gone bad. What you want is you want to play rugby.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best thing that you could play for training to defend yourself against a group of people that are attacking you when you're a member of a smaller group. And I would reference I can't pronounce it. The Greeks used to call it Massawa. It's in southern France. Marseille.
Yeah.
Okay, there's 200 Russian soccer hooligans basically rout 800 to 1,000 English soccer hooligans.
Yeah, we covered that.
And they didn't have any weapons.
Mm-hmm.
They might have picked up stuff, okay, but they didn't show up with any weapons, and you don't need weapons, okay? Any of the boxers I train are going to do more damage hitting you in the chin, okay, than some alt-right guy hitting you over the head with a stick.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, these Russian guys, though, these Russian guys were really highly trained. These guys work together a lot. Yeah.
I think that's so. Again, that reinforces a couple of the points we made earlier. Yeah. This isn't something you get out from behind your desk and beefing up at the weight room. That's not going to do you much good either. You need to get stronger, especially if you have a desk job. But you need to learn how to fight so that you can not fight.
Yeah. And then branding, I think this is really important, and you covered it a little bit with what to wear. Slogan reversal, no to white supremacy, yes
I don't
to family.
Know. Yeah, do you know anybody that's a white supremacist? I mean, I joked, I called myself a white supremacist one time,
No,
but
I think
anybody.
I don't either. I mean, I almost don't know any white people, to tell you the truth, besides the ones I'm related to. Because of where I live. But
this is a manufactured label that's been applied exteriorly.
Yeah, it is. But the Nazi thing also is very bad. And that's an own goal. There are people out there who seem to have affection for the Nazis and for Hitler, and that's just simply stupid. Just stop doing that.
Yeah, move to Germany and try it.
Yeah, I mean, Hitler wasn't actually very good for Germany in the long run, right? That didn't work out for them. It's not going to work out for us. It's not what we want at all.
That's an excellent point. But if you could take if they label you with something that's completely erroneous. I've talked to a number of white nationalist people. None of them believe in white supremacy, even the ones that believe that white people are better than other people. What they want is separatism.
Yeah.
That's not supremacy.
Yeah.
That's isolationism.
It's isolationism because people are tired of the empire. The empire doesn't pay off either, and it does harm other people.
So if I was a political person and I was organizing one of these ill-advised rallies, I think the best thing you could do is, get anti-white supremacy posters, rail against white supremacy, call out white supremacy as the worst thing that's ever happened to people. Our society's been set up so that there's no way that a white man can speak upon race and not be vilified.
Exactly right.
So making white, for instance, part of your label, really? You're right now. It's like taking those poop emojis and putting them on your chocolate candy wrapper. Okay, there's no way. Well, I'm sorry, it's wrong. Okay, white people aren't uniquely evil, but for at least the next 30 years, that barring an asteroid strike or an alien invasion, that is going to be what most people believe until you get a new generation of people who have not been brainwashed along those lines.
Yeah, and I think it's coming. I think that there's a backlash to it because most white people that know that they are not racist in their hearts, and they have been told, "Oh yes, you are. You don't know that you are, but you are." There was even a headline that said that white parents of mixed race children, you are not exempt. You are still a white supremacist. You are still a racist, etc., etc.
Yes.
So you don't have to. I feel like you don't have to accept their frame on the matter, but you also don't.
I would go out and reject it.
Yeah, you don't want to. I just think it's not the topic. you know.
Yeah, chant no more racism. Okay, because racism is what's being targeted at you. When white people were told that they are genetically uniquely racist,
Yeah.
that's racist. So
Yeah.
just go on board and say, okay, we're against racism. Racism is bad. We're against white supremacy. White supremacy is bad. Now, you don't have to say, well, hey, white supremacy is particularly bad for white people.
Yeah.
Okay, because then you're bringing up your color, which is taboo. So no, you can't go that far. But I would just reverse these labels that had been, maliciously fixed upon you.
Yeah.
If you're a political person like that.
Right.
Okay, I'm not political. I would be happy if aliens invaded and took over. I would try not to get eaten. I just don't. I was born in the United States, so the United States government is my master. That doesn't mean I like any other government, because they would surely be just as nasty to me. But I just wanted to point those things out, since this Bobcat Master fellow was kind enough to warn me that I might be mistaken as an alt-right leader, which is pretty bone-chilling. So, Bobcat Master, thank you for that frightening revelation that my antisocial Luddite Darwinist self might be mistaken for a leader of some kind, which is probably the truest sign that the end times are nigh.
No, it may be. I see it as maybe it's not the end times, because some things have to change direction. Things get worse and worse, but maybe at some point they start getting better, right?
Oh, well, that would be a new time.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're definitely in an end time.
Yeah, the end of something is upon us for sure.
Yes, and I would say, if I ever become mistaken for a leader of any kind, then I would say that that's the true sign that the end has arrived.
Well, I disagree with that. I think
I'm an advisor. Okay, I'm not a leader.
You can be an advisor, but the thing is that you are putting synthesis out there that nobody else is. So in that definition, you're doing something first, and you're the leader of it. You can't really get around that. You don't have to take up the banner and march out in front, but you have put together some things that nobody else really does. So
I would prefer explorer.
Yeah.
Okay. Explorer of the body of lies that enwraps us.
Exactly.
Well, I hope we've answered Mr. Bobcat. I think we should break and go to our next thing.
Well, let me close by just reiterating your conclusion here. Says, don't fight in the streets. Okay?
That's right. Always a bad idea.
But if you do, at least understand that you are engaged in the sock puppet end of a media war, and make media impressions priority one. So that's good advice. Maybe you're not looking for a fight, but the mob swarms you as you're picking up your coffee, and you need to do something. So
that's right. And coffee is, by the way, an excellent weapon, but only while it's hot.
Yeah. Don't waste precious coffee. I need to drink that. Don't spill the coffee. All right.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you. Let's break here. Okay, thanks everybody. That's episode 10, part 1. Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 10, part 2, and we're taping September 7th, and James is getting ready to go out west for his annual retreat to the western part of the country. And I have been thinking about Big Ron and Big Ron's Habitat of Baltimore and Ishmael.
Okay, Big Ron, the Yeti of the Maryland Himalayas. Right?
Yeah. And contrast with Ishmael, who is a man of the Mountain West. And then you had this theme, you call it Trails.
In the Robert E. Howard reviews, right?
Yeah, in your Robert E. Howard reviews, that you examine a man as part of his habitat.
A living sculpture. I would say a living sculpture of his habitat, an interactive that the habitat acts upon him just like the wind and the rain does on the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
With Ishmael, it shows up most. This is very similar, actually, but it seems very different. For instance, I have a friend who looks at Ishmael stuff and just thinks he's great, the soul of a man, and then reads Ron's stuff and she's like, what a bastard, this guy. But they're actually doing the same thing. But Ron has been formed in a really savage environment, and Ishmael has been formed in a more prosaic environment, and it's got a lot of its own savagery in it. The guys had to deal with some really terrible violent encounters when violence happens. Where Ishmael is at, you're alone in your pickup truck, maybe on a highway ramp, and it's just you and this meth head.
Mm.
Okay, or you're out on a mountainside, and it's just you and this 2,000-pound animal.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings its own set of peril with it, which makes him very cautious and considered and reticent. On Ron's side, the big animal you're afraid of is the police, the government. And you have a whole lot of dangers with all these different people that are going to attack you in the neighborhoods he's lived in, the type of work he's done. He's worked on jobs where guys will attack you, where a guy hit him in the ribs with a drywall hatchet.
Oh.
And then he picked up a weapon of his own and he's stabbing the guy with his piece of molding or something. So, and then you have the proximity of the really big threat that could effectively end your life, which is the cops.
Yeah.
So with Ron, you have this instinct for what he calls the caper. He was very fond of, he read the Fall of Guerrilla Wall Paul about the little janitor who found a way to make extra money at the supermarket he worked in by exploiting the disagreement between the illegal and the legal cabbies. Mm-hmm. And the legal cabbies are really like predators, and they got government license, and the cops will take their side, and they're not even Americans. None of these guys are U.S. nationals. They charge you a lot more, and they'll even block off the ambulance approach store.
Awful.
And the hackers tend to be like, some of them might be drug addicts, but some of them might be older guys that are injured, and this is what they can do. And they'll borrow their sister's car and they'll split the money with her or something like that. You don't know. And they have to make a deal with you. You have to arrive at a price with you. So there's actually a lot more freedom of interaction with the hackers. So Guerrilla Wall Paul, he takes the side of the hackers and he makes a little bit of money for it. He ends up getting fired because he gets caught taking money while he's on the job, and he's only supposed to be working for the company that owns the supermarket. Well, Ron saw him as a kind of hero because he was, and Ron's idea is you have to do something beyond the color of law to feel like a human being when you live in a place like Baltimore. Because if all you do is obey the laws, your soul's just going to wilt.
Yeah.
And
especially when the laws are not, that's the whole anarcho-tyranny thing. They're not
and the
evenly
laws
applied.
are really a form of predation to begin with.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have Ishmael's, he feels like a person by going away from the corporate setting where he works, from the city. When he drove down into Salt Lake City to get me, he couldn't get out of there quick enough. There wasn't one like, look at this or look at that. No, it was like this guy. I felt like I had been picked up in a Vietnam movie from the landing zone by the guy in the helicopter. He couldn't wait to get the hell out of there before the Viet Cong started laying down fire.
That's funny because that's probably like the least threatening or crowded or the most polite and easygoing city.
And to him, it's like a sewer.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Okay, because he lives on the side of a mountain.
Yeah, he wouldn't like it here.
So it's the same guy. When I've socialized a lot with both of these guys, and when you spend 2 weeks with somebody, and that's all you're doing is spending time with them.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I have spent a lot of time with Ishmael, even though it was just that one visit, and I'm sure somewhere on a notepad my lady friend has calculated the amount of hours I spent drinking with Big Ron.
Oh, really?
Since I started the book project, okay? So
Will that be an appendix for
I'm told it's a lot. I'm told it's a lot. I'm told that my liver's done more work than my brain in the pursuit of the tale of Big Ron. You really get to know a guy even though you haven't known him for that long. And Ishmael's a guy where his friends are in different states than where he lives, the guys he grew up with. And the people he works with are strapped into the solar system, and he's the outsider. And when he's with his family, he's with his family. That's his family. That's not a buddy, So this is a pretty lonely situation to be in. And Ron is in, even though he's not living on the side of a mountain, he's in a very lonely situation too, because he only knows one of the 40-odd guys his age that he grew up with in the two neighborhoods he lived in that's not either dead, in prison, or addicted to heroin.
That was something, that I wanted to talk about Ron too, that I think is one of the most remarkable facts about his life, is that his entire generation of men has been wiped out.
Yes. That's true. These were mostly guys his age that Mescaline and I saw on Labor Day. With every homeless beggar in Baltimore is a 30 to 40-year-old white guy.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, they probably are addicted to some drug. How Ron avoided it, he's got, dude could drink a lot of beer. I mean, that's just for 10 hours straight, and it doesn't even appear to be drunk. But he doesn't have to drink every day. He doesn't fit the definition of an alcoholic. He doesn't let it impinge on his work life or anything like that. My father brought me through the whole battery of the litmus test for alcoholism when he was a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous, and Ron doesn't fit that profile. The big thing is, does it mess up the rest of your life? Does the drink start to take away from that? And one of Ron's big rules is, okay, yeah, I like to drink, but my biggest fear is I won't wake up in time for work.
Yeah.
So I only drink so much, and, you calibrate it at certain times. Now, he was raised by men who hated and distrusted the government and religion. Mm-hmm. Now, he's not an atheist. He seems, I would define him as more of a hopeful agnostic, or possibly, a lazy deist. All right. He didn't go atheist, but he inherited, and that was inculcated in him, that belief that the government is evil. And he immediately, from childhood, saw so-called illegal drugs as a government program.
Interesting.
Because he immediately associated it with the government facilities, the hospitals, rehab clinics, the attention from the police. The police are virtually manage the drug trade.
Yeah.
Okay, that's in a certain way. They manage the drug trade as much as I manage the supermarket. Okay, because there's a lot of things you can't control in a business that you're running when you got 100 people working for you. What you do is you have an eye out for stepping on the people that do really bad things, that kind of go beyond what the system allows. Mm-hmm. So you're pretty much a policeman when you're a manager. That's why everybody hates you. It makes it a fulfilling job. The police are that to the drug trade. So Ron has always seen this drug trade as a government program, as a way of just taking people and subjecting them to government control, to put them in some kind of program, to get them on Social Security, that can tax other people for the SSI and take your cut. He just sees it as a racket, and part of that wisdom, I think, comes from his one grandfather who was a racketeer. Okay? And this guy actually impersonated a U.S. Army officer after World War II. Oh. He was a guy that ran gambling, ran card games, and I think was involved in numbers and stuff like that, and understood how power worked. And his father is a Vietnam combat veteran of the Marine Corps, and he won't even talk about it. Okay, but he didn't want his son to go into the military. So again, it's reinforcing the distrust of the military. Even the grandfather, because there's a step-grandfather in here and there's a stepfather, these guys didn't trust the military, even the guys that went through World War II. Ishmael tells me the same thing.
Yeah.
He was of age to go into Vietnam. Ishmael's like 6 years older than me, so he could have gone in the early 70s. He had uncles and worked with older guys who had been in World War II and Korea, and they all said no. Mm. You know, so we had this idea that World War II was just this heroic thing, and everybody was glad they were served. My experience has been that most of the men that I ran into that talked about it were bitter about their use in World War II. This is the same thing I get from other guys my age, older and younger, that talk to their elders, that just war is it's a rich man's war and it's a poor man's.
And especially when we see, with regards to World War II, when we see what's become of Europe and what's become of the United States, it just makes it all the more.
Oh, I like the photo that compares Hiroshima with Detroit.
Yeah, yeah.
And, which one looks like it got hit by the bomb?
Right.
So yes, that's and we're getting it recently, and I understand this is a lot of the alt-right fuel is coming from guys that came home from Iraq and Afghanistan, and then they find out that they're now pariahs because they're white men. They're now evil because they're white men.
Yeah.
They're even considered evil because they went and fought for this country so it could keep its oil prices down and keep getting work for contractors over in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And continue to get its heroin shipped in from Afghanistan.
That's what burns me.
Now, Ron West did a superb article on that. That was, if you put it in a book, it would probably fill out a booklet. I think it would, in a 6x9 format, it would be like 32 pages that we put up on the site a couple months ago. And it's just disgusting. And I've had a Navy guy told me the same thing. So, well, anyhow, that I see and Ishmael and Ron, I see two guys that would probably get along better with each other than they get along with me. They're more like each other.
You should bring Big Ron next year.
Well, Ishmael already said he's welcome. But, one thing, when you occasionally follow your heart like Big Ron and have a lot of adventures and everything, then your spouse has this very long and detailed ledger of things that are due as payment for your past sins.
Wow.
So maybe that time you bled all over the car or something like that. Okay, so he's going to have to check to see if it's okay with his lady with. Because even though Ron likes to make himself out to be a guy that doesn't care, what the ladies think. He cares very much what his old lady thinks. So
I think that I think I could see that in the writing. Yeah.
So he's a very loyal guy to his family. I got to meet his daughter, who's a very nice young lady coming home from work, and I got to meet his wife's dog, who was a rapist.
Oh.
Yes, it's a little dog, a Scotty or something, and he was kind of fun. Another friend and I interacted with it while we were watching the fights at Ron's. But there's a cop that lives across the hallway from Ron. She's a Baltimore City cop, and her son was walking her dog outside of the apartment complex. And Ron, he doesn't believe in leashes. He's not a leash guy. He believes in freedom, liberty. Well, his wife's little dog hopped up on this other dog and was giving it the old business. Mm-hmm. And the police officer reminded Ron, even though it wasn't her jurisdiction, that he was in violation of the leash law, and he needs to keep a leash on this. And Ron was just, well, your dog wasn't complaining. So it wasn't technically rape.
Oh my gosh! Every Big Ron story has to include that. I think some element.
So it's turned out to be a massive book, and we have a lot of photos for it too. We'll get together and do the final interview, and then do a session where we're captioning all the photos.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
And I will be working on, by the time this airs, I'll already be doing it. I plan on working on a fireside biography with Ishmael, where I would like to write a landscape of the setting that he tells me the story in, and then have him tell me stories about his life, try to shape it chronologically. I have the ambition of writing his biography while I'm with him over this 12-day, 13-day period.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of work.
While we're in the setting that he's in. So,
well, I look forward to reading that also.
When I get it done, I'll send you a copy of the Word file, at least when I get it compiled. In case there's an EMP blast on the East Coast, it'll still survive.
That's what we're doing, just diversifying our backup files.
Right. You never know where the North Korean missile is going to come down.
That's going to hit me. That's not going to hit you.
It might shoot the thing over the North Pole.
Oh, well,
you could end up over Chicago. That's where you want your EMP blast anyhow.
Yeah, right in the middle.
That would take out just about everything but you. Because you're on the other side of the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah, and the Rockies, too. They're bigger. Yeah. All right. What else do you have?
The thing that you notice with these guys that have adapted themselves to their environment, that have really, and Howard points this out in his fiction and even in his poetry, that men that are really shaped by their environment, and I don't think I fit this category. These two guys do. They're very quiet and easygoing, and they're friendly. They're quiet, easygoing, and friendly, because it's almost as if they're part of what's around them.
Yeah.
And most of us are not. I'm not. And most people, I think, in our society have that disconnect from our environment. Now, Ron's environment might not be as beautiful and photo-worthy as Ishmael's environment, but it's still an environment.
Yeah.
And he's part of it. And he seems to be a part of it. And he can pass places where other people go just because wherever he's at, he seems to belong.
Mm.
When he's in this area.
Yeah.
I haven't had any contact with him outside of it. So it's an aspect. The quiet, easygoing nature of a lot of Howard's heroes it's all an expression of the fact that they're molded by their environment. All of his heroes are molded by their environment to an extreme degree.
Yeah.
To a degree that a 21st century cubicle worker is tragically molded by his environment. These people are eroded by their environment, whatever it is. It could be Dark Age Ireland, or it could be post-oak Texas.
Yeah.
Aside from a few nuts like Black Volmea, a couple of characters of his that are whack jobs, most of them are on the quiet side.
Yeah, and I like that. And we talked about it in part 1, that it's more effective oftentimes to be quiet.
Well, you immediately, to see Ron, he conducted an interview next to me right after I'd got done conducting the interview of him. Mm. This young guy who was obviously agitated sat next to Ron. Ron reaches over and he just got this, it's like almost like this Gomer Pyle way about him, only not loud, real quiet. And he's real easygoing. And he's like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing? Would you like a drink?" And Ron buys him a drink. And he can still tell the guy's a little bit agitated. He buys him another drink, and he draws him out in the conversation. And the young guy was talking about the demons haunting his neighborhood, where it was becoming a problem. They were still tracking him, even though he did this spell out in his yard. Mm. I wrote this story up.
Yeah, I remember.
We walked out immediately, and we're both of the opinion that he had been attacked by demons in Baltimore, but they were flesh-based, not ethereal. Yeah. And there's probably something terrible that happened in his childhood too. But Ron was able to immediately relax this kid who was agitated because his father was supposed to meet him, and his father was like 2 hours late. Mm. Well, that's great. You're 18 and you want to see your father and he's hours late. So it gives you an idea what the guy's childhood was like.
Right.
And Ron could sense that right away. He's been around mostly damaged people. And if that guy's a friend, if he's neutral, if he's the enemy, it helps. It's tactically sound for a man to operate like that. And Ishmael's the same way when I was with him, with dealing with other people. Because we met a lot of people, most of the people we met for the first time because we were around a lot of strangers.
Mm-hmm. And he can put them at ease and create a bond.
Yeah, he doesn't have, Ron's got this crafty, insinuating demeanor. Ron could make friends with you even if you've already decided that you hate him because of the kind of hat he's wearing.
Mm.
He even did this. He even wore a Trump hat around during the elections in this majority black city, just so he could draw people out. And then he would work on making friends with them after they would comment on the hat.
Yeah.
And if he saw they were afraid of him because he was wearing the hat, then he would make sure he was nice to him.
Yeah.
So he's a lot more outgoing, albeit in a quiet way, than Ishmael is, because Ishmael is a guy that has come up in a much lower population density than Big Ron.
Yeah.
Big Ron comes up in southwest Baltimore, where every 14 feet a new family lives.
Right.
Because the houses are only 14 feet wide, where Ishmael, like I said, is living on a lone house on the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
And I think their whole town's got like 50 people in it.
How nice.
Right. So it makes one fellow a lot more outgoing than the other fellow.
Yeah. Well, James, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I'm glad you talked about trails, and I wanted to hear more about your plans for writing while you're away. This will probably air while you're away. I hope you enjoy it, listeners. This was part 2 of episode 10 of the Crackpot Podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart.